All right. So for all you New Englanders out there, I appreciate you being here. Jeffrey, it's good to see you. We won't call anybody
You
out by
too.
name, but there are definitely some Jets fans and some Patriots fans that are not here this evening, and we'll forgive them, I think. Um, I'm not sure why this game is important, but maybe we'll solidify first place for the Pats. Probably not, but definitely the Jets win. Maybe they'll make a Shehechianu if they win, and but that's how it goes. But we won't harass too many Jets fans out there. Yeah, I know a lot of rabbis that are Jets fans. I don't. It must be it helps them pray, but I don't know how they stay inspired to pray with your team. Every time you pray for them, they lose. I don't know how that works. But whatever. That's how it goes. Welcome to the world of sports. Um, Speaking of the world of prayer, I actually have one of the sources for prayer. The afternoon service is actually in this week's Torah portion. It talks about how when at the end of the Torah portion, really, when Rivka is being brought to meet Yitzchak for the first time, it says, what was Yitzchak doing? Yitzchak was lasuach basadeh, that he was going to speak or to have a conversation um, in the field. And that they say that language, they share the idea from another verse in the Torah where you see this idea of siach is a language of praying. So you actually have, one of the sources for prayer, for afternoon prayer, is in the Torah, is in this week's Torah portion. So that's just an interesting thought. Um, this Torah portion it's called Chayei Sarah. Literally means the life of Sarah. And obviously one of the most important topics that come up really is just the fact that the Torah portion is called Life of Sarah, but it's actually all taking place after she passes away. She passed away at the end of last week's Torah portion. Last week's Torah portion was really ended off with the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, right? The Akedah Yitzchak. The story, the way we understand it, is that the giant Og um, was talking to Sarah, and he informed Sarah about how that he could see, he was a big guy, he could see further away, he could see that that Avram was putting Yitzchak upon the altar, and he was going to slaughter him, and then she understood that in the end he did not slaughter him, and then that's actually when she passed away. So she didn't pass away from the fact that her husband was slaughtering her son or bringing her son as an offering, or so it seemed. She actually passed away. It seems, many of the commentaries, that she passed away when Avram didn't do it. Like, what happened over here? Avram didn't do it. Like, this was part of the mission. Um, so there's some of the commentaries that kind of flow with that, but that's more of a discussion maybe for next year. We could talk about that. What exactly Sarah's role in the binding of Isaac? She knew, she didn't know. The challenge was given to her. The challenge only was given to Abraham. So that's an interesting discussion. But the fact that the Torah portion is called the life of Sarah, and it's after she passes away, that tells us a lot about what life is really about, or when we're supposed to think. How do we figure it out? How do we live our lives, right? While we're in this world, obviously our actions make a difference, that we can impact other people. Our real lives take place after this world, as it says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, right? That this world is really just an anteroom, right? This is a room that is just the hallway, right? It's the foyer, but it's really where we wait to then go into the main ballroom, right? Where we get to go into the next world, which is where we really get to enjoy the fruits of our labor. We get to enjoy what life is really about, what our existence is really about, which is why the Torah opens up talking about the life of Sarah and talking about how amazing she was. Then it talks about Avram trying to find a burial place for her. This is the Torah portion where Avram actually makes sure to purchase the cave of the matriarchs and patriarchs. We call them Aras Hamachpelah, right? This is the cave that we on our trip, Jeffrey, we did not go there. Hebron is not an easy place to get to necessarily. Right now, it's a little better. I know some friends of mine whose kids just went there recently. I went to Hebron, I think once in my life. I don't think I went twice. I think just once. Um, Remember it a little bit. I don't remember it so well because it was a while ago, but it was definitely an experience. And as a Jewish person traveling into Hebron, it was not simple when I went, and it's still a highly, um, you know, tension-filled area from a Israel standpoint, a conflict standpoint. But what I think is something that the Torah is trying to tell us over here is they always talk about, oh, what would they, if someone, if they were giving a eulogy about you right now, what would they talk about? Right? What would they talk about? What would be on the tombstone? Right? So obviously it's a daunting question, but it's an important question. What would we be known for? And that's something that we should, I don't have to give thought about it too often, but it's definitely an important thing to think about. And also what's interesting, which I was thinking when I was, reflecting on the Torah portion a little bit, what's the gap between the reality of who we really are and the way that people perceive us? Is who's the real Noach? Is what people see and hear and talk about, right? Or would talk about or would write about on the tomb? Is that the real Noach? Like Noach? Like would I like be hovering above the grave and be like, oh my gosh, that's how they understood me? Well, if they knew the real me, then they would be upset, right? So we want to very often the way people perceive us or what we project to the world is not who we really are. And I think part of our goal in life, and it's important, is a concept. Right, fake it till you make it. Right, that's a real thing. If you're not feeling it, right, do it on the outside. There's a concept in the Gemara. The Gemara says that the chisonius, the outside, is ma'ora the panimi, is actually helps the inside, right, get excited, get inspired. So even if I'm not feeling my Judaism, let's say, right, I'm going to go through the motions of doing the Jewish thing. Look, this way it'll work. It'll slowly, penetrate and I'll bridge that gap between the reality of who I am, or I know who I am on the inside, and who I project to the outside, or the opposite. It could be whichever one it is. I know, and some people, they keep themselves very humble. I have a friend who's extremely humble, and what he projects on the outside is not who he is on the inside. And that's his, he's at different points in life when we were much younger. I used to try. I was like, dude, you got to talk to one of your mentors about this. Like, I don't think you're supposed to be. I knew him very, very well, and I was like, I think it's too much. Like, you give off this impression of you not being a good person, when I know in truth you really are. But like, if the gap is too much, it's not healthy either. And I think when we talk about the Torah portion, talking about the life of Sarah, it's just that reminder of like, okay, what am I projecting? Who am I really? What are people perceiving of me? And the truth is, the world likes to have this attitude of like, oh, don't care about what other people say. Just do your thing, man. Right? It's like, that's like an attitude that the world has. So the Torah doesn't exactly believe in that. It does believe in it in a certain way where you're doing the right thing. Other people are doing the wrong thing. And you're going to change what you're doing based off of what they're going to think I'm weird, or they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm a fanatic. They're going to think, whatever thoughts they have about me. Okay, so over there, you're doing the right thing. Don't care about what they say. Okay, there's truth to that. But the opposite direction, where they're going to make fun of you about it, I'm sorry, the opposite direction where it's, no, you should care. You should care about what people say. If you're doing something, right, your midos, the way your attributes are, your character traits, the way you carry yourself, don't try to be too much of a weirdo. I'll give you a good example of it. There's something in the Mesilas Yesharim, The Path of the Just, written by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. So he talks about a concept called Mishkal HaChasidus, which means the balancing of Chasidus. And Chasidus doesn't mean like the chassid with the curly locks and the white stockings and the right. We're not talking about that kind of. What is a chassid? Is someone who goes above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to their service of Hashem. In English, we would call it a pious person, right? That's what a chassid is. But Mishkal HaChasidus is where you have a balance of that piety, where you're going above and beyond. But when that going above and beyond starts to step on the people around you, or starts to step on, coming across as being normal or what is considered normal within the world, right? When you're in that space of above and beyond the call of duty, then you can't do things that are too strange, that are too off, that are going to ultimately create a desecration of God's name as opposed to a sanctification of God's name. So an example would be, let's say my tzitzis. So my tzitzis in general, my tzitzis, I keep them out. In general, I got my on the four corners, I got my strands sticking out. But when I travel in general, when I'm traveling on like the long trip, let's say when I travel from Memphis to Baltimore recently, right? I wore a baseball cap most of the time, and I tuck my tzitzis in. I know you're gonna say, "Oh no, I can tell you're Jewish anyways," right? But yes, maybe they could if they're looking for it, but I don't need to call the attention to it. And it's a nice idea to keep the strings out, but it's not the time when I'm traveling through parts of, middle Tennessee that have certain kinds of flags up, and I don't know what they're going to think about me if I pull into that truck stop, or multiple, signs that are on their trucks at the truck stop, because the truck stop's the best place to stop because the bathrooms are actually going to be available and they're actually going to have decent coffee and it's going to be a good place to stop, as opposed to maybe I'll stop by that gas station that might have a one-person bathroom, right? So truck stops are always better. But not everybody that goes through truck stops are the biggest fans of Jewish people. So I don't need to call the attention to myself. Just put your baseball cap on, have you, tuck my tzitzis in, and I'm just passing through. It's one thing if I was living there. I'm not. I'm just passing through. That's like this balance over there. So I think that's part of it also. That's part of this trying to figure out what am I projecting to the world? Who am I? What am I? And I think the Torah portion is really by calling it that, by referring to the Torah portion that way, and that being the opening lines of the Torah portion, it gives us both the lesson of the real life, right? The real deal life takes place after we pass on from this world, which means we need to work hard in this world so that we can live the ultimate life in the next world. That's one piece. That's the true life. And the other piece is what would be on that? What would be on that tombstone, right? What's going to be on that matzeva, that monument for you? At that eulogy, what are they going to say about you? And only we really know the truth of as to who we really are. And is the speech that they would give about me, am I living up to that speech? Or am I not living up to that speech? And if I'm not, let me work on that. Let's try to close that gap between the ultimate Noach that the people are going to talk about because they're going to exaggerate about me and all these wonderful things. Oh, look at all these wonderful things, right? But how much of that was real? How much of that was real? And let me work on trying to bridge that gap and fill it in with good stuff. So I think those are just opening lines of the Torah portion. A lot of other things out there, a lot of beautiful lessons that are in the rest of the Torah portion. If you get a chance to read it, talk about Eliezer, who was the main servant of Avram. He goes to track down Rivka, and he gets to meet Lavan, who's an evil dude, who we talk about during the Seder. And Rivka's dad is not such a good dude, and we don't know too much about Rivka's mom. But we get to, and that whole episode of the miracles that took place at the well with Rebecca, it's really amazing to read some of those things. But we see how he didn't rely on miracles. He wanted to see her good deeds. He was wanting to hear her good deeds at the well. So there's something to think about over Shabbos, over the weekend. And God willing, the blessing for us is that we should merit to work on bridging that gap. We should work on creating the reality, right? The perceived, the projected Noach, the perceived, projected whoever it is, the Jason, the Jeff, and the Will, and beyond. We should work on bridging that gap. And if it's already there, so then let's up our game, so that the life of so and so, right? My life that the world's perceiving, let's make it better. Let's make it bigger. Let's make it bolder, and work on bridging the gap again. And I just keep on growing and growing in that fashion, God willing. And if we do that, that means our lives will be filled with awesomeness because we're constantly growing, we're constantly striving, and we're doing great things, and that will bring about awesome things and help change the world and help change ourselves and ultimately become our best selves. So that's the blessing for the week.